Welcome to Unit 2 of Introductory to Horticulture. Today we're going to talk about plant taxonomy. Uh, what plant taxonomy is the naming conventions that we use when we're talking about plants. So this is going to talk about all the different ways that we differentiate between different plants. One of the real key things that I'm going to talk about is plants have a common name, which we know of and we may talk about quite a bit, but they can have more than one common name based on different locations, based on different languages. We really talk about plant taxonomy being the Latin name, because this is the same for each species. So um, many different plants may have many different common names. All plants will have only one Latin name. So that's why we don't really utilize common names. If we're trying to find a specific plant, we want to make sure we're using the Latin name for those plants. So it is called the binomial system of naming plants. It was originally started by a Swedish botanist, Carolus Linnaeus. Basically, it's the two Latin names. It's going to be the last two groupings of names, and it's going to be your genus and your species. So your genus is a category that is going to define where to find your plant, and the species is the specific species. Very important to remember when writing these down. The genus is always capitalized and the species is never capitalized. So the genus is going to describe some portion of the plant or give some information about the plant, and it's going to be other plants that are related to this plant will have the same genus, but then to differentiate the specific species is where we will start to give it more clarity, what color it is, what variety it is. If it comes from a specific geographical location, we will start to delineate those species out. When we talk about the genus, like I said, it's going to be a group of plants. So the example here is the rose family or a potato family. They have the same genus, but then the species will start to get more specific based on what color of the rose or what varietal of potato you're talking about. So it's very specific to that specific plant or that specific type of organism. Doesn't just go for plants. This actually is the same convention for naming animals, naming bacterias, naming any different thing that you're going to encounter. Horticulture isn't only going to encounter plants, you're also going to encounter animals and bacterias, nematodes, all different types of living things, and they're all named the same, in the same um, one of the families. So this is going to start with above the genus. So you start with your kingdoms, which is going to be plants or animals. You start with then your phylums, where you're going to start to continue to go down and get more and more specific the more you come into different orders. So an aster family, it's going to have the largest of all the different plants. This is going to include the most varieties and its flowers. Um, when we start to talk about all these different flowers, they're all going to have different characteristics, but they're all generally related to this aster family. So there's some other important families. Not going to go over all these, but there are a ton of them. So you can see which one's there. And one we'll probably talk about is Poaceae, which is a grass family. And there's a ton of different grass families. You may have noticed the Poa name. That's going to be in, you're going to see it a lot. And we're going to talk about it a lot. So just kind of notice that that's something that's there. So I talked about this earlier when we talked about this. The genus is always capital. The species is always a small letter. Something you'll notice there is sometimes you'll have something called a cultivar, which is either a hybridized version or a specific color. So a species may be a specific species, but then you may have a different color. One example of this is a Hesperaloe. Hesperaloe is a succulent plant, and there are two different varietals or cultivars. One is a yellow and one is a red, and so they will be delineated red or yellow, but they are all Hesperaloes. Um, Another one is lantana. Lantana is a yellow or pink flower, and they will all have lantana, and then the color will be the different cultivar and will be delineated based on cultivar. So here's your taxonomy chart. Like I said, kingdom, that's going to be your plants. Other kingdoms include animals, bacteria, fungi. Um, Then you have division or phylum. I've always known it as phylum, and so that's going to be what types of plants. Um, Here it says seed plants, so that's what their division is how they're delineating this variety of plant. And then you have class, and in plants you have two real specific ones. You have the angiosperm or you have the gymnosperm. And then you come into order and family, and then we talk about the genus and then the species. And then you'll notice here how it has a variety or a cultivar, and this specific one is October Glory. So it's probably some orange color because it's talking about October, and it just happens to be what they wanted to call this specific variety or cultivar of this plant. So there is a person who is a taxonomist, and this is a real job. There are people who go out there and they identify plants, and there are books that you can utilize to help you guide through the taxonomy of a plant. They are like a field guide, and you start to look at a plant, and it'll start to ask you certain questions, and you start to answer certain questions. You start to um, come up with it's in this family, and then if it has this characteristic, it's in this order, and then if it has this characteristic, it's this genus, and then you start to get further and further and further down, and you're able to identify these plants. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not the best at naming plants, and taxonomy is not my strong point. If it's green, I make it green. If it's yellow, I make it green. But knowing what types of plants, I'm very good with common names. I am not great with Latin names. So not everybody needs to, but to understand what these Latin names are and how to look for them or look for these specific types of plants is very, very important. So a quick summary. This is a very short lesson, but plants are named by taxonomists, and these taxonomy is set by the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. It's a binomial system, and plants are utilize Latin, and then they are specified by genus, capital letter, species, lowercase letter, and then whatever cultivar or variety you're discussing. So that's it. That's a quick one. I hope there's some more quick ones like this. Thank you.